The heat is on. Hey, all right. I'm about to pull up something I came across. About to pull up something I came across. Check it out. Check it out.
Exactly what that means. I think if you have a little group, there's a little egregore involved in that. You get along well, you work together well, and even in your own office where you work, if you're still working, there's this little egregore. Is it a good one? Is it a nagging one? I mean, is there conflict amongst you? To get along and work well with one another. A thought form, an egregore develops around these thoughts that you have when you work together as a group. This egregoric entity can gain a degree of autonomy and influence over the group that sustains it. Because every time you think in that atmosphere, you are strengthening or supporting that egregore, that group egregore. Examples, and I mentioned this again, but it's important to understand that we're being conditioned along so many lines. There's so many groups and influences that we have. There's the family. There's the city. There's the nation. And it affects our role in the world. And we don't realize exactly what is going on as far as that conditioning goes. The egregore embodies shared attitudes and goals of any particular group that created it. Egregores a distinct presence on the egregores behave like a distinct presence on the astral plane, powered by a group's repeated thoughts and feelings. And more often, if it's similar feelings, the egregore grows in strength and feeds on the emotions and thoughts of the individuals within that group. And as it does that, it can outlive any single member and take on a life of its own within that particular domain. It subtly influences the group's members, reinforcing the shared thoughts or moods. Even after the original group, if it has people coming into it over and over again, sustains it. And this is really described as an accumulation that can keep up a certain magnetic link with its contributors and can exert a certain collective pressure for better or for worse, depending upon the nature of the group's thought. Early theosophical insights, and we've all run across the idea of thought forms, but they've never been attached to the word egregore. But if you understand the definition of an egregore and you go back and reread these from that perspective, you'll see that they are speaking about egregores. And it's the more you study the thought forms that we generate, the more obvious it is that that's what they were referring. Early theosophical teachings acknowledged the egregore principle without explicitly using the term. This said, Blavatsky used the word in The Secret Doctrine, in stanza 1, and in the Theosophical Glossary describing how identical thoughts attract and aggregate. Thought forms not only stay linked to its source, and what is its source? Me, you, but is drawn towards other thought forms of a similar type, combining with them. These congregate together on the astral plane, forming a good or evil force that coalesces or forms into a kind of collective entity. Uplifting clusters of thought may form an angelic-like egregore. Hateful, violent thoughts form a malignant, demon-like entity in the astral substance and creates a tangible group aura or astral climate which members of that group live. The characteristics of family, local, and national opinion is a part of this. A kind of astral atmosphere through which everything is seen and influences or colors our perception. An individual born into a nation or joining any group finds their thinking subtly shaped by this pre-existing mental atmosphere. These collective thought entities are karmic products of the group's history and can strongly influence individual behavior. For example, a normally peaceful person is in a frenzied mob, may feel swept up by what is essentially the mob's egregore. An egregore is essentially a composite brain, I think I briefly mentioned that, made of many unified thoughts. It operates mechanically to perpetuate the ideas and emotions that formed it. It will push members towards certain actions or feelings, not by reasoned intent, but by the momentum of collective habit. However, if an egregore happens to be aligned with lofty spiritual ideals, it can act as a channel for genuine, higher inspiration as members tap into the uplifting group soul, so to speak. An immoral egregore can become a conduit for chaotic or destructive forces. Theosophy sees no sharp dividing line between a powerful thought form and an egregore. I'm moving on to segment 3, which is where we speak a little bit about magic. And this is important because there's unconscious magic in the world. And we don't realize that we're approaching that line. And I want you to understand just what this means. In Theosophy, magic is the application of spiritual or psychic forces. And whether or not it is white or black depends entirely on the motive and purpose. As HPB stressed, the infinite use and applications of spiritual force with a selfish or material aim is black magic. Selfishness is black magic, whereas using such power solely for the blessing and benefit of others is white. In short, selfish equals black as a motive, and selfless equals white as your motive. This sharp ethical line is the core distinctions throughout occult philosophy.
Peace. And that's why I brought it up. This is a core. So you see the magic in between using the word white and then using the word black and then identifying people as these things, right? Because this is occultism, right? This ain't just general knowledge to everyone, and everyone that has knowledge, it doesn't apply, right? It's like I just came across the Ben Ishmael tribe, yeah, but calling yourself black, as this lady just says, and it's definitely in occult knowledge, and also in your subconscious, what you're calling yourself, you might end up hypnotizing your mind, even if you want to be positive. Even if you want to be positive, but you're trying to carry a positive with an anchor, right? Or give it the allegory of a person with a book bag, and then the book bag got weights on it, right? And you can just carry as much as you can carry, but you after that you can't carry no more. It's no more go. You can't go no far. So the things that you carry in your mind to outlast how far you really going to go. And that doesn't mean like in academics or the word successful, these plagiarism words for having attained something to identify with something, a thing for a thing. But yeah, this lady I was listening to, and she said these things.
Selfish or unselfish motive in what we do and in what we think. White magic is performed with altruistic intent, in harmony with divine law and compassion. The white magician seeks to serve, to heal, to uplift, and never for personal gain. Their work is often subtle and invisible. Examples include prayer, energy healing, blessing, or guiding others spiritually, all done without ego. In theosophical terms, true white magic requires purity of heart, self-discipline, and humility. It aligns the practitioner with higher spiritual beings such as,
And I want to be mindful that she's still describing white magic at this point.
the masters, angelic hosts, and archangels, for examples, and all the forces of light. Black magic, on the other hand, is any attempt to manipulate occult forces for selfish, insidious ends or ill intent. This ranges from harmful sorcery and curses to more insidious forms of like using psychic powers for dominance, for greed, or for vanity. Many popular manifestation practices, it is said, border on black magic if done selfishly. For example, using visualization or the law of attraction, and we've heard about this in many places in today's world, on social media particularly. To gain like personal wealth or success violates the selflessness principle. Blavatsky wrote that attempting such as occult shortcuts for material gain is, to quote her, black magic and spiritual sorcery. No matter how harmless it seems, the karmic cost of black magic is grave. We tie ourselves to lower forces and accumulate heavy karma. Western occultists not only acknowledge egregores, they often deliberately create and work with them. Magical orders and fraternities such as Masonic lodges, the Rosicrucian Order Amorc, for example, perform group rituals with concentrated symbols and visualizations specifically to build a potent group thought form that protects, guides, and energizes its members. Over time, this group spirit becomes a reservoir of psychic power that members can draw upon. Successful occult groups are said to have an egregore that survives beyond the group's founders, taking on a legacy of its own. Occult literature suggests that many deities and the archetypal beings humanity worships are sustained, at least in part, by egregorial power. When generations of devotees pour forth faith and emotion into a divine form, a mighty thought form develops around that image. Generally, any symbolic pattern that has served as a focus for human emotion will build up an egregore of its own over time. The gods and goddesses of every religion, past and present, are at the centers of vast egregores charged with specific kinds of power. HPB mentions in the Theosophical Glossary that egregores, as beings whose bodies and essence are a tissue of the so-called astral light, are the shadows of the higher planetary spirits, whose bodies themselves are of the essence of the higher or highest divine light. Even a true spiritual being is surrounded by the thought emanations of worshipers, which can intensify miracles or even answer a prayer more effectively even. On a more mundane level, a corporation's logo, and this is important too, we are being conditioned by corporations, whether we realize it or not. A corporation's logo or a nation's flag can become an egregoric symbol, accumulating emotional energy from all who rally around it. Some Orientalists see egregores as neutral constructs, simply amplifying what is fed to them, even if unconscious, but for good or bad ends. Other occult thinkers issue warnings. The esotericist Valentin Tomberg, a Roman Catholic, by the way, insisted all egregores are inherently dangerous and associated egregores with the devil archetype, an artificial being that enslaves its creators, saying that whenever people surrender their will to a group mind, they risk being bound by an entity of their own making. The occult author Mauni Sadhu took a more modern stance, stating egregores can be either good or bad depending upon the creator's intentions. We've already heard that. A noble egregore of compassion versus a malevolent egregore of hatred. Consider too how a centuries-old cathedral, this is just an example, how a centuries-old cathedral filled with prayer and devotion accumulates a sacred egregore of peace, a combined aura of all the worshipers and rites performed there. A modern example, the collective intent on social media, a dedicated fan community for a celebrity can generate an egregore of adulation, or in negative cases, a toxic egregore in a hate group forum. Theosophical and occult teachings emphasize the need for conscious awareness and ethical responsibility. This is what the society is all about. This is what theosophy is all about. Ethical responsibility, understanding who we are, understanding our place in the universe, understanding everything as best we can, but taking ethical responsibility along the way. Every group one joins has an egregore, a group soul or atmosphere. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately been hit with a sense of something very subtle? The test of a person of strong character is to be aware of the presence of an egregore. In practice, this means a wise individual remains somewhat detached and observant in groups, but participating in the uplifting aspects of a group mind, but resisting blindly following any collective negativity. If an egregore is harmful, one can oppose it by withholding one's energy from it, effectively starving it, transforming its energy through positive action, or in a spiritual context, invoking higher forces to disperse it. Ultimately, understanding egregores teaches us that unity of thought is power, and that we must use that power conscientiously. The white magician employs thought forms and spiritual will to heal and help others. In essence, prayer and goodwill visualizations are forms of white magic. Theosopher C.W. Leadbeater noted that concentrated thoughts of goodwill can envelop a target and arouse feelings and thoughts of similar nature in them. This is the basis of metaphysical healing and blessing rituals in many traditions. Altruistic thought can manifest as a shielding entity. This shielding and protective agent, as an egregore, its duty is to opportunistically guard and strengthen a group's subtle defenses, to strengthen it, but without independent mind. Many practitioners of white magic consciously create protective circles or guardian thought forms around homes, temples, or loved ones, often visualizing angels or divine light to ward off harm. Visualization such as this often involves invocation, calling on a deity, angel, or master to infuse the work with protective energy. Magic is done in cooperation with one's higher self or divine will. The magician acts as a channel for goodness. Any thought forms or egregores created are consecrated to serve universal good, not personal agendas. This way, the work accrues positive karma and avoids the ego traps of magic. Now, black magic practitioners deliberately create negative thought forms to harm, to control, or to manipulate. Intensely hate-filled thoughts can coalesce into actual attacking entities on the astral plane. For example, a sorcerer focusing malevolence on an enemy might generate a fierce thought form, an astral knife, so to speak, or a demonic shape, and launch it at the victim's aura to cause injury or illness. In occult terms, this is manufacturing an artificial elemental programmed to do harm. Leadbeater wrote that skilled Atlantean black magicians were capable of making artificial elementals of extreme virulence and power. These are essentially psychic weapons, vicious, vampire-like beings that live only to carry out their creator's dark intent. Many traditional forms of black magic, such as curses, evil eye, voodoo, operate via destructive thought forms. The practitioner might use a ritual prop like an image of the target to concentrate hatred or fear, which empowers the thought form and links it to the target. The astral light, to use Eliphas Levi's term, becomes charged with a destructive image that seeks to manifest in the target's life. If the target's own will force is weak or their vitality is low, the implanted thought form can precipitate misfortunes or obsess the person's mind. However, if the target is protected by their own positive aura or another's help, these attacks can rebound on the sender, a known peril of black magic. Black magicians may also harness group evil. A cult leader, for instance, might deliberately foster an egregore of fanatical loyalty or fear among his followers to hold them under sway. Such an egregore essentially enslaves a group's will, a smaller scale version of what Tom Berg warned, the devil-like egregore that makes creators into slaves. In modern times, propagandists and demagogues, even if not the cultists per se, can unintentionally create powerful negative egregores. The eventual spiritual consequence is terrible. The black magician becomes spiritually bound by the very forces he or she unleashed, as those parasitic thought forms cling to their maker and drag them down. We live in a universe of unsuspected power and potential, and we are an integral part of it. Our potential as individuals and as spiritual beings is immeasurable. And the more we jump into theosophy and read this and take it to heart and actually attempt to live it in our lives, the truer that is. Let us try to comprehend the depth and breadth of what lies ahead of us as human beings. Not only can we transform ourselves, but with courage and with fortitude, we can change the world. Thank you. And I'm sorry for running over.
Peace, peace. Yeah, she was talking about her little white good and evil. That's why I listened to her for a bit. But let's get to the Chimoa, right? The Chimoa people. Right. These people also wear a fez, a type of fez. This type of fezes that they wore. And surprisingly, it was gold too. Golden fezzes, brass fezzes, lead fezzes. I'm looking for the gold fezzes. What the Buddha part? See, I seen this in gold, and now it's all in silver. But where's the gold at? Let's see. Let's get back out. Let's get out. Okay, here's some gold. Gold fezzes. Pre-existing artifacts before Columbus. I was trying to get to the skin tones of these people because they give us the whitewashed versions of us. But this one he has a copper brown tone, Moorish color. And it's resembling Roman and Egyptian. Here they doing right Egyptian likeness of Egyptian. Oh, that's not sharing the likeness of Egyptian, right? And the headdress, as we notice, the Roman headdresses are the same, right? And they're this is what they said some of the Egyptians was doing, right? The same things these Egyptians are doing. Let's see. Here, look at this one. Same thing that the Egyptians. But who puts it together? They call the so-called black people gypsies at one point in time. So you just throw an E in front of that, you get Egyptians. Isn't this just like Dr. York? Wasn't Dr. York doing these same type of rituals in Georgia? But this is in Peru. The Incan is the so-called Incan, not even Incans, because the Incans they said the Incans it made them extinct, the Chimu people, right? The so-called Chimu people. Okay, here's their summary of South American Indians, Shimu, who maintained the largest and most important political system. So they had a whole political system here, huh? In Peru before the Incas. The distinctive pottery of Shimu, see pottery. When they say pottery, they've got more items than pottery because we have buildings, we have ancient tech, but they just throw these words at us to throw us off course. Now, ideal garments, and we can see the people in Louisiana when they doing festival and carnival, they wearing these garments. These are the same garments, and you see how the headdress where the feathers are spread across. You also can see that in Roman. We can see that also in the Roman attire. We also could see the fez worn here. They also wore the golden fez. There's a golden, but I haven't seen it yet since I pulled it up now, I guess they were hiding it. They're hiding it, but view, see the crescent moon. This is ancient stuff when we dealing with the Moors. They deal with swords. Doesn't it also give a vibe of so-called samurai right here? Right? Let's see. Let's pull up Roman helmets. Let's see. Okay, now resembling the Roman helmets, right? I'm looking for the one that goes side to sides, the gladiator helmets. There we go. There we go. Whoa, 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 whoa. Go back. And see, now we see Roman helmet. See how the Roman helmet goes from both sides, resembling the indigenous people. So this is a tradition. How did the Romans get it? Or this is the same culture going by the different names. See, the Roman helmet is symbolic of identity. So ornated Roman gladiator helmet, right? Ornated Roman gladiator helmet with reflects an eagle with relief including an eagle and Papyrus Pus founded on the gladiators bracket barracks in Pompeii first century. So it has the eagle on there, and it look around. It has a phenotype on there as well. If we look close enough, have a phenotype, right? But it's not about these guys. It's about the Shimu, right? It's about the Shimu. It's about the Americas. So let's see if I can bring up. Right, share this tag. So what are they known for? Let's see. Let's go through an overview on the Wikipedia. And I noticed, right? I was going to make a relation to KH and the CH. So, but they said not to be confused with Kamar. So let's go into that. Let's go to Kamar. What is this? What is this? Because we're dealing with illiterate linguistics people. These people are really illiterate, or they just liars. They just liars. So land Kamar land or land of Kamar, a colloquial exonym used for Cambodia, right? Cambodians. So why isn't it with a K then? Why is it with a C? Why would the Cambodians use KH? But that's a whole nother thing, right? Ethnic group Cambodian. So the Khmer people are Cambodians. So I'm looking right now. I'm looking into the Shimar people, but the similar. I see the similarity in the language. Crumb, and that's Greek. Comoro, colloquial. See, colloquial basically means what in the vicinity. So I just seen their contradictions. Oh, I didn't even show this. So this is what I'm looking at right here. Comor people, Cambodia, Cambodia. All right. So the Inca emperor, rim of the four parts. So that can also go into the swastika because it's dealing with north, south, east, west. It's dealing with fire, wind, earth, and water. Um, the four cardinals. So the Inca Empire was known as the rim of the four parts. Was the largest empire in pre-Columbian. I hate that reference or that place name because they say pre-Columbian, like everything begins with them or something, right? Oh yeah, I gotta look up the other guy. I got this other guy to look up. This Columbo guy. Where's my? Before I forget about him, it's in this book. What is this? I gotta find it later. No, it's this other Colombian guy. They say they got Columbus name from. I'll see it later. But I hate that pre-Columbian all that like given. We were in the city of Cusco, and erroneous translated. You what? It's erroneous translated as noble Incas. Account was the 10th Sapa Inca of the Inca Empire, fifth of the Hanana destiny. His father was Pachu Pikachu, and his son was Hanana Kappa, Topic, and Inca. Whatever. Sound who be sounding like Kapu Kokika Tokika. Who the hell talking like that? Oh, they got camels. They got pottery of the camel. Okay. Kingdom of Shamar. How do you pronounce this word? Let's see. Shimu. Shimu or Chimer. See, and that's a coincidence. Sound like Mo. The Moshi people, the Moshe culture, and the Moshe tapestry flourish in North Peru. Well, I thought these people were very interesting. Let's get out of that. Spiritual inherence. Citadels. Compounds or citadels. So they had citadels. They and compounds. That's interesting. But it's the fact that sweet potato made from Peru to Polynesians before Columbus is a documented challenge to the independent development model. It proves that pre-Columbian transcentric occurred, even if it was just sporadic. Polynesians and Indies or Indies to Polynesian contact. So they had contact from the Indies to the Polynesians pre-Columbia, supported from not supported by the mainstream. The current people are best known for the distinct. Now, what the hell is that word? Get that. Come back here. Monochromatic, contain or use only one color. Monochromatic light, or light of other radiations. So what the hell that got to do with that word? I don't know what monochromatic has to do with this. Pottery and metalworking of copper, gold, silver. Right. So I just noticed that they had the similarities of Rome all over and Egypt at the same time. Right. Resembling both sides of the world at that, right? Even China as China. Let me see if I can find a YouTube video.
Perched along the arid northern coast of Peru, the Chimu civilization is captivating the world with its rich history and
Okay, we got some YouTubes.
Perched along the arid northern coast of Peru, the Chimu civilization is captivating the world with its rich history and remarkable architectural achievements. Emerging from the shadows of its more renowned predecessors, the Inca and Moche civilizations, the Chimu Empire is finally receiving the recognition it deserves. Chimu Empire is finally receiving the recognition it deserves as researchers uncover the secrets of this once thriving society. Let us delve into the fascinating story of the Chimu civilization and explore their remarkable cultural legacy. Origins and expansion. The Chimu civilization flourished between the 9th and 15th centuries CE, occupying the coastal regions of modern-day northern Peru. Their empire extended over an impressive 1,000 kilometers, with their capital, Chan Chan, serving as the political, administrative, and cultural epicenter. The Chimu people, also known as the Chima, were expert agriculturalists, adapting to the challenging desert environment through advanced irrigation systems. Architectural marvels. The most striking aspect of the Chimu civilization lies in its architectural prowess. Chan Chan, the largest adobe city in the world, served as the Chimu's crowning achievement. This vast urban complex spans approximately 20 square kilometers and comprises intricate buildings, grand plazas, and remarkable walls adorned with intricate motifs. The Chimu's advanced knowledge of hydraulic engineering is evident in their complex canal systems and reservoirs, which sustained their society's agricultural productivity. Cultural and artistic excellence. The Chimu civilization exhibited a rich cultural heritage expressed through their art, craftsmanship, and religious practices. Skilled artisans produced exceptional ceramics, textiles, and metalwork, reflecting the intricacies of Chimu life and religious beliefs. Their pottery often featured elaborate designs, depicting scenes from daily life, mythological creatures, and ceremonial rituals. The Chimu were also renowned for their fine metalwork, crafting elaborate jewelry, ornaments, and ceremonial objects from gold, silver, and copper. Social organization and governance. The Chimu society was organized in a hierarchical structure, with the paramount ruler known as the Sapa Inca. Underneath the Sapa Inca were governors who governed different regions within the empire. The Chimu employed an efficient administrative system to manage their vast territory, enabling the empire to thrive economically and politically. They fostered trade relationships with neighboring societies, further enhancing their cultural exchange and prosperity. Decline and the rise of the Inca. The rise of the Inca Empire marked the beginning of the Chimu civilization's decline. In the 15th century, under the leadership of the Inca Emperor Tupac Yupanqui, the Inca armies invaded and conquered the Chimu capital, Chan Chan. The fall of the Chimu Empire marked the end of an era, and the remnants of their once mighty civilization were assimilated into the Inca Empire. Modern discoveries and preservation. Despite the passing centuries, the legacy of the Chimu civilization remains etched in the sands of northern Peru. Ongoing archaeological excavations and research are shedding new light on their history, customs, and traditions. Dedicated efforts are being made to preserve and protect the invaluable ruins of Chan Chan, ensuring that future generations can appreciate and learn from this magnificent ancient civilization. Conclusion. The emergence of the Chimu civilization in Peru offers a captivating narrative of a society that thrived amidst the harsh desert landscape. From their architectural marvels to their artistic achievements, the Chimu left an indelible mark on Peru's cultural heritage. As our understanding of this once-forgotten civilization grows, the world is increasingly captivated by their remarkable achievements.
What language did the Chimu speak? Have you ever wondered what language the Chimu people spoke? The Chimu civilization, known for its impressive capital Chan Chan, had a unique linguistic heritage. The primary language they spoke was called Quingnam. This language was native to the northern coast of Peru and was distinct from the Mochica language, which was used by the earlier Moche civilization. Quingnam was primarily spoken by the elite within the Chimu Empire. The Chimu territory stretched from the Jequetepeque River in the north to near present-day Lima in the south. This means that Quingnam was widely used across a significant area, reflecting the cultural richness of the Chimu people. Interestingly, there was also a coastal fisherman's language known as Lengua Pescadora, or fisherman language. This language may have been closely related to Quingnam. However, both languages faced extinction shortly after the Spanish conquest in the 16th century. As the Chimu people began to adopt Spanish for trade and survival, Quingnam faded away. Unlike many ancient cultures, the Chimu did not have a writing system. This makes it challenging to gather information about their language. Much of what we know comes from archaeological finds, including inscriptions and records from the colonial era. These artifacts provide glimpses into the linguistic landscape of the Chimu civilization. From a broader perspective, the Chimu language and culture representing an important chapter in the indigenous history of Peru. They highlight the diversity of pre-Inca civilizations in the region. The extinction of Quingnam after Spanish colonization reflects the impact of European conquest on indigenous languages and cultures throughout Latin America. In summary, the Chimu spoke Quingnam, a now-extinct language of northern coastal Peru. This language was mainly used by the elite in their empire, and was closely linked to but distinct from the Mochica language. The loss of Quingnam after Spanish colonization marks a significant moment in the history of indigenous cultures in Latin America. The archaeological site of Chan Chan remains a powerful symbol of the Chamu's cultural and linguistic heritage.
All right, yeah. So I just seen Carolina, but okay. So this is this garb we're looking at is called the Caroline feathers. So I'm relating that to the Carolinas. Carolines, Lord of Sipton, Inca. So let's go look it up. See. Caolin.
Kaolin.
Oh, so it's a Kaolin. Kaolin. A first soft white clay. Actually, what? So they're making this from China. Porcelain, making porcelain. Whoa, whoa, whoa. We got the same thing. I was looking at KAO Kaolin. Kaolin feathers. See, I'm looking at this. Kaolin. So now let's go back. Yeah. Just put Feathers. Okay, white feathers, contact from deceased or angels, purity, love, guidance. Black feathers, death, power, beauty, protection. Gray feather, balance, com- compromise, open mindedness, flexibility. Brown, safety, masculine, grounded, connected to nature. Blue, blessing, spiritual knowledge, health, higher self, connection. Red feather, love, passionate, power, fertility. Green feather, fertility, abundance, financial opportunities, health. Yellow feather, joy, cheer, light, positive. Pink feather, love, care, and emotional healing. Emotional healing. Really. Mixed color feathers, black and white feathers, protection, message about death and afterlife. So, can I assume this is the same as the checkerboard? Black and white feathers, protection, messengers about death and afterlife. White and gray feathers, decision helpers, deep understanding and love from the deceased. Brown and white, purity, stable, protection, and masculine forces. Black and gray, feathers. So I see in feather now. I see earth in feathers. I see eat in feather. I see her in feather. Okay, got it. Okay, so it means a high mountain clay. Let's switch the words up. Let's put a C there. Okay, see, that's one of the things. See, it didn't even change. It's the same. So it's the same with a C there or a K. Hmm. Interchangeable, all right? So let's go. Let's get out of here. This paper, the issue of the blacks in ancient and modern Mexico, is discussed to determine if this idea diminished the influence of Amerindians in Mexico civilization. It presents sociologically, and linguistic evidence to examine the role race of ethnic plays in African and Indian relation from ancient to modern times. The evidence suggests that the Necrocians, black or Costa Chicas, may be the descendants of the Olmec. This word. Chica, see, of Guerrero, the Guerrero people. Guerrero. Nazas, the Incas, the Chinos, all were more dark skinned than anything. See, these are appropriation, right? Because if I put in more, there we go. See, we got some. Then we got the reappropriation of. Oh, I'm not sharing. Oh, those are the Moorish skinned people, brown skinned people, Moorish skin, Negro el la Costa, Costa. That's what they try to call it. Let's go with this. The term referred to a community in Mexico, particularly in the Costa Chica region, where it's known as significant Black heritage. So there's a lot already Black heritage. They claim to be descendants of Africans. They claim. Well, where did they get that term from? Who were present in ancient Mexico, with evidence suggested that they may be related to the Olmec civilization. Historically, have faced discrimination and have maintained their cultural identity, often living in traditional African style huts and particular rituals that may have excuse me, African origins. Despite their claim of indigenous status, many researchers suggest that they are descendants of runaway slaves, which add complexity to their descendants. So they're claiming that they're African. They're not African. They are just claiming. See, and then right here, right? They never claimed that they were slaves and are indigenous to the Guerrero. These are Guerrero people in our Oxa, in our Oxa. So this is just saying that brown skins, Moorish people always been here in the Americas, and they just trying to take you out of America for repurposing the land to call it their own, I guess. Because liars are liars, pants on fire. So Kier Mayans, vast archives, the Chimas face. So just the same people, but it just changed the name up, right? A little bit. Chimo, Chima, Chimu. Individuals holding a fan under his left arm. It might have been a flag. Given the discovery of numerous Olmec artifacts depicting black begs a number of questions. Were the black or African people in ancient American? Do the Africans? These are all questions. They trying to question it, something that they can plainly see their eye, or trying to replace it with whatever their thoughts. Right? What is the relation? They mean it's showing who the people are. The people show who they are. Why? Why I will not take a picture and as I'm taking this picture, I'm a alter the picture so I look something different. But a lot of people would do that. You know, a lot of people would make themselves more favorable than they are. So that's a ego type of trip. That's an ego type of trip. But they are called the Negro Costiano Chinos. Costiano Chinos. Right? and they're depicted as the so-called blacks. Now we know this is a misnomer when they call us the word black, giving us a place name for their shenanigans. But by them saying black itself and referring to us shows that this is the people of the world. Like this if I just showed you this picture without giving you a background of Olmecs or the Chino people, you would think this is the Chinese. You would think this is the Chinese. I would think this is a Chinese. This is not a Chinese. This is American. The ancient Americans at that. The tall term, right? Amentic. And Mentec was probably, oh no, I don't know what I did right there. Okay. Was probably the name of Mandinka or a Mandinga, people who were the foundation of the Olmec people. The Mandinka. That's what they calling them, right? Ain't that's the African name? Because it's they like to switch up a lot of things. L and X-Men. Then they usurped the word X-Men. They recalled them X-Men. So these people keep doing these lies about us, about you. So let's take this word and copy and see what this is. See, and then it goes to like newer things, right? Dealing with technology. Wallet. All they did is take the names and make other names now. Then when you go back to the name, now you got to go through all these propaganda things in front of it, right? All this propaganda. Now we know where the name came from. It's a god. So it's a god, right? Let's put it right that. Let's put the God to it because they will lie like a rug. The X-Man god. Images. Share. Let's see, got the X-Man. And notice it also looked like Chinese. It looked like Buddha, not Buddha, what you call that? Oh, this the verse double head. Mayan god, right? Verse double head or the double eagle. Cuckoo cut. Right, this is the god of religion. This is the X-Man. X-Man. They use symbolism. They take the symbolism and try to reappropriate. Because they think we're not going to look. It's the Washita. They think we're not going to look. But we're looking at the pictures and we're reading the words. Now, this is a Mayan god, but this is from the Chi people, the Chimu people. So how is it a Mayan god? So I guess the Mayans came in and started religion holding up the deities of the last group, because it goes the Chimu, the Inca, then the Mayan. Shimu, the Inca, then the Mayans, and then the Mayans ain't even their real name, right? They just started calling them the Mayans. Oh, it's the Inca. One of them. One of them names are placeholder names. Now to try to show, it's the god of the North Star, Maya, the North Star. Now, anybody knows True North. True North is the real compass that's always pointing upwards. The True North, the Thunderbird. This is. Can't really tell what that is. Look like a totem pole.
One of the reasons that I love being the history guy is that we have some really great fans. And sometimes those fans will send us stuff in the mail that's really spectacular, interesting pieces of history. And a couple of months ago, some fans sent us a hat collection that had belonged to their late father. And we very much appreciate when people send us in things like that for us to take care of. It shows that you have a lot of faith in us, the history guy, to take care of family artifacts like that. And this collection included quite a number of interesting hats, including some Navy hats, but it also included this box here. And I was very excited when I saw this box because I knew exactly what was in here, and I really wanted to see it because each one of these is always just interesting and spectacular, because this is, of course, a lodge hat. Now, in America, we might think of these hats as sort of silly. We associate these kind of hats with fraternal lodges, and this particular hat would come from the Shriners International. And to tell you the truth, and it's a very spectacular hat indeed, it's probably intended to be a bit silly, in that the Shriners International is a fraternal organization that is dedicated to fun and fellowship. And I think the hats are really intended to emphasize the fun part of that. But you might be surprised to find out that this hat, which is used in such a way in the United States, actually has quite an interesting and important history, a history that deserves to be remembered. This type of hat can generally be described as a peakless cylinder with a flat top and a tassel. Well, there's been some variance in shape, size, and length, and some disagreement over whether several similar designs are the same type of hat. Let's start with the name, which you probably know as Fez. Most likely, although not completely certain, the name comes from the city of Fez, Morocco. Morocco's second largest city was the capital of the Kingdom of Morocco from its foundation in the 8th or 9th century until 1927. The name Fez is actually derived from the Arabic word for pickaxe, as the founder of the city, Idris I of Morocco, was supposed to have drawn the lines of the city with a silver and gold pickaxe. But the hat's association with the city purportedly comes from berries. The story is that crimson-colored berries from Fez were used to make the dye to dye the hats red, and that so associated the hat with the city that the hat took the city's name. That being said, a Fez does not have to be red, and they do come in different colors. The traditional name of the hat is tarbush, which is derived from ancient Persian and roughly means head cover. The original origin of the hat is unclear, possibly because the design is so simple. It might have originated in Morocco, but other theories include ancient Greece or the Balkans. It possibly originated as a head covering over which a turban would be wrapped. There are many similar types of head coverings used throughout the world for that purpose. And as the foundation of a turban, this type of hat has largely, though obviously not exclusively, been associated with Islam. But for Muslims, the tarbush has an advantage in that not only can it be the basis for a wrapped turban, but with no peak or brim, it covers the head but allows the person to lower their head to the ground during prayers. It's partly the basis of the popularity and political history of the hat, starting in the 19th century with an important connection with the influential 30th Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, Mahmud II. Mahmud II came to the throne in a turbulent time for the Ottoman dynasty, which had been founded in 1299. The Ottomans had lost significant territory to Russia in the 1768-1774 Russo-Turkish War, and the loss had underlined the need for the empire to reform, with many arguing that the reforms of Peter the Great in Russia had given the Russians an edge in their long rivalry. Central to the issue was the question of military reform, and military reform was tied to the Janissary Corps, which had existed since the 14th century. The Janissary were an elite corps of household troops, originally composed of slaves who had been taken as young boys. Raised and trained together, the Janissaries were paid, unlike other slaves, and followed strict rules, including being forbidden to marry until the age of 40. Because of the system, the Janissary units maintained exceptional discipline and order and were known for absolute loyalty to the Sultan.
Part right here was critical for me because the Jainism, right? Those were Christians, captives, right? And they were mostly male. So the Jainisms or mostly male are the warriors, because when you look at the movie The Long Sword with Sidney Poitier, it was the Moorish emperor. Sidney Poitier played the Moorish emperor, which was the head of these armies, or the Jainism armies. They see the representation of the Moorish was Sidney Poitier, but the empire or the army were also Caucasian, or the Jainism, or the Christian, because at those times they called people by their faith. They didn't call people by race or ethnic group, so they called them Jainisms. So them Jainisms would have been ex-Christians into Islam.
In the 16th and 17th centuries, there were effective and fearsome troops, and the size of the force went from around 8,000 at the end of the 15th century to nearly 70,000 at the end of the 17th century. But the nature of the Janissary Corps changed over the centuries, and what started as an elite fighting corps slowly became a privileged class that dominated government. Military modernization meant training and equipping mass troops, and the Janissaries saw that as a threat to their privileged status. In 1797, Sultan Selim III raised an infantry corps that was to be trained and equipped by modern European standards. The corps was officered and trained by Europeans and provided modern weapons. The Janissaries saw the reform as a threat to their privileged status and independence, and found allies in a political elite who saw the force as being too European in character. In 1807, the Janissaries revolted and deposed and imprisoned Selim III in a coup, installing Selim's cousin, Mustafa IV, who promised to protect the status of the Janissaries. But the empire was torn between conservatives and reformers, and Mustafa ordered both Selim and his own half-brother, Mahmud, killed in order to remove threats to his throne. Selim was assassinated, but the 23-year-old Mahmud escaped. When a pro-reform general took the capital, he brought Mahmud to the throne in yet another coup. Mahmud II continued Selim's reforms, although he did not have the power yet to take on the Janissaries. The Sultan slowly consolidated power. In 1826, he announced the creation of a new army formed along European lines. Predictably, and some saying intentionally, that led to another Janissary revolt, but this time the Janissaries were quickly defeated, and Mahmud executed their leaders, disbanded the corps, and confiscated their property in what came to be called the Auspicious Incident. In the Fez ended up being an important symbol of this military reform and a great shift in the centuries-old empire that has led historians to refer to Mahmud II as the Ottomans' Peter the Great. The military use of the Fez in the empire started with a naval commander who adopted the Fez for his Marines, as Marines needed to be nimble and light, and the Fez was more practical than a turban. When Mahmud II viewed these troops, he saw the hat as not just practical, but as a symbol of modernity, and adopted it throughout the Ottoman military, partly as a specific contrast to the traditional turbans of the Janissaries. The Fez became a literal symbol of the modernization of the Ottoman military. But more than that, Mahmud II wanted the hat to represent the modernization of the entire empire. In 1829, he ordered non-military officials to wear a plain fez and banned the wearing of turbans. His clothing reforms intended to create a uniform look for the entire Ottoman population that included the fez to be worn by all men. This was, however, more than just fashion. The goal was to break down the traditional structures that resisted reform and challenged the power of the Sultan. By banning turbans, Muhammad was eliminating symbols that distinguished traditional classes and eliminating sumptuary laws intended to reinforce class status. It was a radical egalitarian reform intended to bring a medieval empire into the modern age. The fez was, essentially, a required universal male head covering, literally intended to be the definition and symbol of what it meant to be Ottoman. The care of the fez was very important, and it would have to be frequently brushed. Children could make pennies in the street combing the tassels. A poorer person might cut off the edge that was discolored or frayed, making their fez grow progressively shorter. Part of the nature of the reforms was to emancipate non-Muslim subjects of the empire, granting them more civil liberties and equality of rights. And as such, the fez, although its origin might have been tied to the Muslim religion, was eagerly embraced by non-Muslims of the empire. It became a particular symbol of Ottoman Jews, seen here being worn by David Ben-Gurion, considered to be the founder of the State of Israel in Ottoman Palestine in 1914. The fez became so important to the empire that much of fez production moved from Tunisia to Constantinople, but as synthetic dyes were developed, production slowly moved outside the empire. Seeing economic opportunity associated with the demand of the large Ottoman population, progressive Jews from the Austro-Hungarian Empire started to manufacture the hat. By the turn of the 20th century, as much as a third of the world's fez production was in Austria, where the fez once again became embroiled in world events. In 1908, Austria took advantage of its weakened neighbor and annexed the Balkan states of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The political and cultural underpinnings of what came to be called the Bosnian crisis of 1908 are long and complex, but the action had far-reaching impacts, challenging European alliances and balances of power and creating mistrust, and is seen as one of the events that laid the groundwork for the First World War. But it also affected headwear, as the act led to an Ottoman boycott of Austrian goods. As Ottoman production could not make up for the loss of Austrian fezes, the Bosnia crisis spelled the end of the almost universal use of the fez in the Ottoman Empire. It also spurred a new fad of white fezes made in France, a symbol of the boycott. The fez declined in Turkey and the fez production was devastated in Austria, although the hat remained popular in the Balkans. It is also ironic that the connection between the fez and the modernization in the Ottoman Empire led to its eventual demise. The Ottoman Empire was partitioned after the First World War and the Sultanate abolished in 1922, ending the reign of the 36th Sultan, Mehmed VI. Ottoman rule in Turkey was replaced by the Republic of Turkey and a secular state under Kemal Ataturk, who is seen as the founder of the Republic. In a new wave of modernization in 1925, Ataturk banned the wearing of the fez under penalty of death. The once symbol of modernity had become a symbol of the past, which Ataturk described as a symbol of ignorance, neglect, fanaticism, and hatred of progress and civilization. While the fez continued to be popular in parts of the former empire, over time nationalist movements have come to associate it with Ottoman imperialism, and the hat is reviled in many places today, where it was once popular, as a symbol of foreign oppression. For example, the fez remained popular in Egypt until the British-aligned kingdom was overthrown in the Egyptian Revolution of 1952, and President Gamal Abdel Nasser banned the hat in 1958. The major exception is the home of the hat's namesake, Morocco. Morocco had resisted the Ottomans, and the hat never came to be associated with them as oppressors. Rather, the fez became a symbol of nationalist resistance to European dominance and French rule in Morocco, as well as of the Moroccan royal family. Today, the King of Morocco, Mohammed VI, still embraces the fez for court business, although it has fallen out of fashion in the nation as somewhat archaic and formal, and is little seen outside the court. The fez also maintained popularity in Southeast Asia, where the hat that some saw as a symbol of foreign oppression under the Ottomans was seen by others as a symbol of Muslim opposition to European rule. The fez played its own role as part of military tradition. It was used by the Ottoman army into the 20th century and was a common headdress for locally raised native soldiers that were part of colonial armies, such as the King's African Rifles, into the 1940s. The fez is part of the traditional uniform of Greek Evzones, elite light infantry whose dress was derived from clothes worn by anti-Ottoman partisans. Evzones are today part of the Greek Presidential Guard. The hat was also sometimes worn by units of Zouaves, 19th century light infantry that was linked to French North Africa and were adopted in other countries, including a unit of Papal Zouaves and American units during the Civil War. Although American Zouaves tended to wear a kepi, the fez was still a popular off-duty hat. The fez was also worn by the 13th Bosnian Mountain Division of the SS, a unit of Bosnian Muslims recruited to fight for the Germans during the Second World War. But of course, as this example shows, the fez lives on as a ceremonial hat for various fraternal orders. Americans largely connect the hat with the Shriners International. This hat represents the Alcea Bay Lodge in Waldport, Oregon. The Shriners were formed in 1870 as a fraternity for Freemasons that stressed fun and fellowship. The Shriners International webpage explains that the hat represented the Arabian theme the fraternity was founded on. It also serves as an outward symbol of one's membership in the fraternity. But the fez is also used by a number of fraternal orders in different colors and was used as a symbol of fraternal organizations in the 1933 Laurel and Hardy film Sons of the Desert, part of the U.S. National Film Registry, for being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant, according to the Library of Congress. And of course, the fez has had cultural impact beyond the Shriners. This became the favored hat of the 11th Doctor Who. My daughter recognized the fez as the hat of Grunkle Stan in the Disney children's show Gravity Falls. But realize that for millions, this hat is a cultural touchstone, was literally the symbol of a great empire, so culturally significant that at sometimes it was required and at other times it was banned. That's a hat that deserves to be remembered, and a reason that I'm proud to have this hat in my collection. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The History Guy, short snippets of forgotten history between 10 and 15 minutes long.
Yeah, they be
What
making
language did the Chamu speak? Have you ever wondered what language the Chamu people spoke?
Yeah, they've been wilding. So let's do this. Let's see if they got one. Cause
Discover ancient Peru. Discover ancient Peru with Museo Larco. Discover ancient Peru with Museo Larco. Chimu. What was life like in the great city of Chan Chan? The pace of life in the great capitals of the contemporary world is marked by the speed of communication and the daily activities among their inhabitants, which drive their development and growth. Chan Chan, the great urban metropolis between the present-day city of Trujillo and the seaside resort of Huanchaco, was the residence of the powerful Chimu rulers, becoming the center of political and administrative decisions of an expanded empire on the northern coast of Peru some 600 years ago. There, the lords and their families lived in residences or palaces, surrounded by administrators, craftsmen, and a population dedicated to agricultural production, fishing, and the maintenance of the city. From this city, built on the edge of the sea, the Chimu managed to extend their influence along the entire northern coast from Tumbes to the region north
I just want to notice that this is a fez. It's on their heads.
of Lima. Behind the high walls and hidden from the eyes of outsiders, the hectic political and religious life at Chan Chan was marked by a rigid administration and architecture that controlled the access and movement of visitors to the plazas and audiences. On the walls are immortalized forms and beings linked to the world of the origins, the sea. Walls in the form of large mud nets seem to trap those who, like the fish, were at the mercy of the seabirds. The Chimu lords and ladies, distinguished by their refined taste in dress, covered their bodies with colorful garments and metallic ornaments. These ornaments highlight
Now, these are supposed to be gold, and they're showing it in this color. But as you can see, they're crowns, and they are a fez.
bird-like attributes, such as long plumes and feathers, which enabled them to reach the sun high in the sky and then plunge into the depths of the sea, home to the gods who ensured life and fertility in the waters. All these ornaments, along with various types of ceremonial vessels, were produced by the skilled master craftsmen in the workshops of this great city of Chanchan. Thus, prepared for the feasts and banquets, the rulers shared drinks such as chicha and also participated in dances to the rhythm of drums and panpipes. Festivals in honor of the ancestors were celebrated with similar intensity. They received all kinds of offerings, such as camelids and spondylus shells. Their bodies, shrouded in bundles, were periodically removed from their tombs and carried to the courtyards and squares where they were worshipped. The Chimu assimilated these customs from the Wari culture, just as the Incas did shortly afterwards in Cusco. Nearby, in the ponds or cochas, the water that rose and gave life to the Totora reed was a reminder of the animating and regenerating forces that emanate from the world below and mark the beginning of a final journey towards the vast ocean. Many of these customs and beliefs have endured over time, becoming part of the memory and living culture of the current populations of the northern coast of Peru.
Before the Spanish conquest, and before the Inca Empire, one group created the most important South American civilization at the time, the Chimu. The Chimu civilization lasted almost half a millennium, from the year 1000 to around 1470 AD. At its height, the kingdom spanned the region between the southern border of
Notify that, let me say 1470, right? And 1492 is what? Right around the corner, right? A couple of more years from 1470. So they lasted from 1000 to 1470 to their calendar. Like, you got to remember, this is European, the interpretation of the calendar as well as the language. So they're inaccurate. You know what I mean? They've been inaccurate, and they're doing this intentionally, I believe. But as you see, these cultures all mirror this the same culture from what they call Egypt over there to over here. They're mirroring what they call Rome, what they call Greek. This one culture resembles all of those other cultures.
Ecuador and the Peruvian capital of Lima. Much of the Chimu's success had to do with their engineering capabilities.
I gotta compare it, right? Because that's the waters, or that's the earth, that's noon, right? It's the same story of creation right here. Right here itself shows the same creation story that mirrors all the other creation stories and given in part to the imaging.
And artistry.
We had the gold fezzes there. He wore a gold fez. Like, literally. After this community was so-called extinct, I guess this was the rise of the so-called Tupac. This is where we see the word Tupac comes from, mirroring the rapper.
The Chimu were able to construct massive structures, particularly in the wealthy capital city of Chanchan. Thousands of adobe structures, such as palaces and temples, were up to hundreds of feet long, and some of those buildings had walls about 30 feet high. The Chimu also developed a signature artistic style. Craftsmen excelled at producing luxury textiles and elaborate metalworks. They also created ceramics that were distinctly Chimu and often reflected aspects of their coastal lifestyle, such as fish, otters, and seabirds. Despite advancements in art and engineering, the Chimu civilization eventually fell. By around 1470 AD, they were conquered by the next great Andean civilization, the Inca.
See how she said that it goes into calling the Inca Indian, the next Indian civilization, when we know these terms been reappropriated in 1621 when Indian was substituted for the word Moorish. So these people will adorn the name Moorish as well. They will take upon the title of being a Moorish or Moorish. And I just learned about the jaw flute. The jaw flute, that's also called Morrising. They call it Morrising. They also call it the Jew flute. I'm gonna see if I can bring that up, but yeah, they call that Morrison. So we have a type of instrument that's also called Morrison, and you know all the symbolism with Morrison or mooring a boat and that, but it also reflects as a tool or an instrument. So I'll bring that up in a second.
Centuries later, however, the Chimu culture lives on. In 1986, Chan Chan was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site, helping preserve the legacy of this ancient culture for many more years to come.
Okay, let's see what else they got here.
These are the mysterious ruins of Puma Punku. These are the mysterious ruins of Puma Punku, nearly 13,000 feet in the Altiplano of Bolivia.
Evidence that something extraordinary happened at Puma Punku is in front of our very eyes.
High in the Bolivian Andes sits Puma Punku, an ancient ruin carved with such precision that modern engineers admit it shouldn't exist. Blocks weighing over 100 tons are sliced with perfect 90-degree angles. Yet history tells us the builders only used stone hammers and bronze chisels over 1,500 years ago. For generations, experts have argued over how it was achieved, or if we're even asking the right questions. So, researchers did something no one had tried before. They fed every known scan, photograph, and measurement of Puma Punku over 12 terabytes of data into a cutting-edge artificial intelligence. The result shocked even the skeptics, because not only did the AI recreate the site, it revealed something far darker hiding in its design.
Archaeologists are baffled by what Puma Punku was, how it looked.
Why Puma Punku shouldn't exist, yet it does. To truly understand why researchers are so rattled by what our AI reconstruction just uncovered, you first need to understand just how baffling Puma Punku already was before technology got involved. Located on Bolivia's high-altitude Altiplano, a cold, windswept plateau sitting more than 12,000 feet above sea level, Puma Punku has puzzled experts for generations. This isn't just another Incan ruin. It's a site so advanced that even seasoned archaeologists admit it shouldn't have been possible for the people who allegedly built it over 1,500 years ago. Let's start with the most basic question. What is this place made from? The complex is constructed mostly from two types of stone, a softer reddish sandstone and a far tougher volcanic rock called andesite, which has a hardness rating of about 6 on the Mohs scale. That's just one notch below quartz. According to historical records, the Tiwanaku culture, which supposedly built Puma Punku, is said to have had stone hammers and basic bronze tools at best. Trying to carve andesite with that kind of technology isn't just difficult, it's almost absurd. And yet, somehow, they not only carved it, they engineered it. The stones are massive. The largest weighs an estimated 131 metric tons. Imagine trying to move nearly 70 full-sized family sedans stacked together. Most theories claim these blocks were hauled on wooden rollers. But there's a catch. The site sits far above the tree line where almost nothing grows. That means timber would have needed to be chopped in the lush valleys far below, then dragged uphill across inhospitable terrain just to start moving these stones. To do that dozens, maybe even hundreds of times. Suddenly, the simple explanation doesn't feel simple at all. And then comes the precision. Forget rough-cut ancient mason work. The
I just used this to prove that most of the mainstream is lying about ancient artifacts that are found and showing that they don't know what these things are because it's not their culture or they don't have no so-called records, so therefore they're making it up, or what they call it reconstruction and backdating evidence to fit the said narrative of the mainstream. So this mainstream narrative has already been blew up. They've been reconstructing these things, and now they're having LiDAR, right? They use LiDAR on some of these sites. Now, my question is, we seen them going all the way around the world, and we know who controls LiDAR. LiDAR is controlled by the United States. Why haven't they show reports of the structures here in the United States, so-called territories? We got Mexico, they got Africa, they I think they even got the pyramids, Egypt, all that, but we don't see none here, right? Because we know about the DUMBs, right? Deep underground military bases.
stones at Pumapunku look machined. Many are cut at perfect 90-degree angles with surfaces so smooth they reflect light. The famous H blocks are the most astounding. Identical andesite pieces carved.
That's also where the luxury brand Hermes, if y'all see it, that's where Hermes gets its signature from. This is where Hermes gets its signature H, right? If you ever seen a Hermes or had a Hermes, then you'll see the symbolism of the same figure H here.
H blocks are the most astounding. Identical andesite pieces carved with complex internal right angles, recessed reliefs, T-shaped slots, and grooves that look closer to factory-manufactured parts than anything you'd expect from a pre-industrial society. Stand them side by side, and you realize they were meant to interlock, like giant stone Lego bricks. Some even have channels where molten eye-shaped bronze clamps were poured into to lock the stones together, revealing an understanding of metallurgical casting techniques not thought to exist in this region at that time. While it's not exactly true that a razor blade can't pass between the stones anymore, they've been cracked and shifted by earthquakes and centuries of weather, many of them still fit together with astonishing exactness. So the questions pile up. Where did they get the engineering knowledge?
Well, that's questions for either people with the lack of this knowledge or 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 enemies, right? Want to figure out other people's techniques, because that's one thing I learned in my lifetime. I don't think all information is for everybody. I don't think I should know how to fricassee a dog and saute a dog and how to, you know, cut his cut all of whatever with the dog and how to cook that. That's not a thing I would like to indulge in. And it seems like people don't understand that their code they it's just like the LBT crew, right? That crew, they're forcing their culture on to others, and you can't necessarily force your way into others, but you can do it symbolically and undertone forcefully, and that's what's been happening by saying independence, by diluting the independence that we have and the freedoms that we have to specialize this to different entities or different people groups. So everybody shouldn't have everybody knowledge. Know what you know. Grow what you grow, right? We share what we need to know, not what we don't need to know. I don't need to know that your crew or your people decide to off little girls in your culture because y'all think it's too many people. And then years later see the development of less of your men. It's going to happen with that, right? You're lessening your strategy. So the strategy of that was it is it more moronic, right? Let's use that word. More demure and more moronic to say it's off the girls and keep the guys. So you have less incubators, right? You have less wombs, you have less men being born like that. With more women, more boys are likely to be born. But I'm just thinking out loud. So it just don't. I wouldn't want to be part of a culture like that. That's what I'm saying. So it should be standards of a culture and knowing the visible borderline to cross over and to not to cross over into different cultures. Because if a cannibal shared that he was a cannibal, could you possibly be friends with a cannibal? Or the world is so delusional to accept something in that nature as part of nature. So it's kind of hard to ask hard questions. The easy little breadcrumbs is breadcrumbs, but the hard questions.
What kind of tools did they use to achieve this level of precision? How did they move stones heavier than a blue whale across unforgiving terrain? The crumbling explanations. Why historians needed help from a machine. The truth is, traditional theories about Puma Punku had quietly been falling apart for years. The mainstream explanation goes like this. The Tiwanaku people, using stone hammers and bronze chisels, slowly pounded the extremely tough andesite stones into shape. Afterward, they supposedly polished the surfaces using sand, water, and hours upon hours of manpower. In controlled experiments, researchers have shown that this can work if you're carving one small block. The problem comes when you zoom out. Knowing you can carve one perfect 90-degree corner is not the same as explaining how several hundred tons of those stones, uniform, repeating, and interlocking, were created and assembled more than 1,500 years ago. The pace of the primitive method simply fails to match the immense scale, consistency, and standardized design.
And my response is asking all these questions when you're disturbing people's culture, right? Just initially disturbing culture. It's I think it's a fine line of exploring something and then basically all right calling yourself discovering something. So
Seen all across Puma Punku. Either these people had a workforce so enormous it would rival modern construction crews, or something about the story is missing. That gap opened the door to alternative theories, some fascinating, others fringe. One rising idea is the liquid stone or geopolymer theory, which claims Tiwanaku engineers didn't carve these stones at all. Instead, they supposedly knew a chemical process that let them dissolve andesite into a slurry, then pour it into molds like ancient concrete. This might explain the sharp angles and H-shaped blocks, if it were true. But most geologists strongly reject this. The mineralogical signatures in the stones show no signs of reformation. These blocks are natural, quarried stone. So the debate was stuck between a traditional explanation many believed was too weak, and outsider theories most believed were too wild. That's when a new approach was born, one that didn't rely on what we think they could or could not have done. Instead, a global group of researchers launched something they called the Altiplano Project, a bold attempt to let the evidence speak for itself. Teams from universities in Bolivia, Germany, Japan, and the United States spent 5 years collecting every piece of measurable data they could. They used high-resolution laser scanning to map over 150 individual stones down to the micron. They ran ground-penetrating radar to hunt for buried structures. They analyzed chemical signatures of metals left behind on clamp points. They brought in satellite imagery to try and trace lost quarry routes. Astronomers even checked whether Puma Punku aligned with star systems as part of a cosmic plan. All told, they gathered over 12 terabytes of raw information, a digital time capsule locked inside stone. This is where the technology entered. Instead of telling the AI what to find, they told it to reverse engineer the site. No preconceived theories, no human bias. Just take the data, angles, alignments, tool marks, composition, and try to rebuild Puma Punku in the most logical way possible. The goal was simple. If there was a system behind this place, a design language, a workflow, a hidden plan, maybe a machine could see what humans had missed. The AI's revelation, what the stones were really saying. Once the artificial intelligence got to work, it didn't care about reputation, ancient legends, or long-held academic theories. It didn't see stones. It saw data, vectors, chemical traces, mathematical ratios, even celestial coordinates. From that digital chaos, something extraordinary took shape. For the first time ever, Puma Punku reconstructed itself. For centuries, archaeologists have walked among collapsed walls and scattered megaliths, trying to guess what the original buildings might have looked like. But guessing comes with bias. The AI had no such problem. By comparing thousands of tool marks and matching broken fragments like pieces of the world's most difficult jigsaw puzzle, it digitally snapped everything back together. What emerged was not a simple courtyard or temple. According to the model, Puma Punku was once a massive, multi-level architectural marvel. It featured a raised platform mound, several interior chambers, gateways connected by corridors, and a complex system of channels. Some channels, it found, were carved with such precision that water would have flowed through them at specific rates, forming large, shallow pools. Positioned just right, those pools could reflect the night sky, suggesting ceremonial observations of the heavens using water as a giant mirror. But that was only the beginning. The most shocking thing the AI uncovered wasn't about appearance, it was about process. Puma Punku wasn't constructed stone by stone in a random, tribal fashion. It was manufactured. Like a modern car factory, the site depended on interchangeable, modular components. It found that 45 of the famous andesite H-blocks were carved off a single master template. The spacing of grooves, angles, and recesses was mathematically identical within thousandths of an inch. That implied standardization, almost like a factory assembly line. The AI went further to identify a core group of roughly 19 separate block types, which repeated across the entire site. Combined in different ways, these building blocks formed walls, gateways, terraces, water systems, everything. In other words, Puma Punku was not random masonry. It was a giant construction kit designed centuries before the idea of prefabrication even existed. Once it recreated the complex in three-dimensional space, the AI started running mathematical analysis across the site. That's when it found another layer, geometry. Over and over, the site revealed very particular proportions. Ratios like 1:11618, better known as the golden ratio, famous as a mathematical expression of beauty and harmony. The AI traced that ratio through doorway heights, slab widths, and even through distances between gateways. It became clear the builders didn't just want the structure to stand, they wanted it to express principles of sacred geometry. Then, the AI cross-matched the architecture against both solar and stellar alignments. Yes, as previous scholars believed, major alignments linked to the solstices and equinoxes were present. But astonishingly, the AI found more subtle alignments pointing to constellations, polar star paths, even lunar standstill positions, and, most intriguingly, positions of the night sky as seen around the 6th century AD. The conclusion was haunting. Puma Punku wasn't just a ceremonial site, it was a giant astronomical machine, a clock not for hours or days, but for centuries. And then it got darker. Using those astronomical alignments and mathematical constants, the AI proposed that Puma Punku might not have been designed to simply observe, but to predict. By simulating movements of the heavens encoded in its layout, the software detected a repeating cycle, one that seemed to point toward rare cosmic disruptions, meteor showers, asteroid debris streams, or cometary returns that could threaten Earth. In other words, Puma Punku might have served as a warning mechanism, recording a pattern of cosmic danger and alerting future generations to these recurring celestial events. The AI then turned its attention to the destruction of the site. Traditionally, the scattered stones are attributed to earthquakes, weathering, or looting over centuries. But the debris field didn't behave like typical earthquake damage. The direction and dispersion suggested something far more violent and sudden. The AI calculated the kinetic force required to throw multi-ton stones the distances observed, and found it consistent with explosive airbursts or catastrophic flooding. Essentially, the very type of event the site might have predicted could have also destroyed it. The revelation shook researchers to their core, because it didn't require extraterrestrials or science fiction. It spoke of something far scarier, a lost human intelligence. A culture 1,500 years ago, or possibly even older, that achieved a level of engineering and astronomical understanding that rivals what we call advanced today. A culture capable of designing modular construction sites, precise prefabricated stone systems, and time-tracking devices connected to the heavens. And then they disappeared. No gradual decline, no written manuals left behind, no obvious successor is copying their methods. One day, the knowledge ends. Just silent ruins and scattered clues. A global pattern of impossible stones. What makes Puma Punku so unsettling isn't just what the AI found in Bolivia. It's that, when you zoom out, the site suddenly feels like part of a much bigger and stranger story. It's not standing alone in the pages of history. All over the world, scattered across thousands of miles and thousands of years, we find megalithic sites that share the same head-scratching qualities. Massive stones that shouldn't have been movable, precision cuts that shouldn't have been possible, and astronomical alignments that suggest whoever built them wasn't just stacking rocks. They were coding knowledge into stone. Take Machu Picchu in Peru, for example. Everyone knows it as the lost city in the clouds, built by the Inca high in the Andes Mountains. But look past the picture postcard terraces and you'll notice something familiar. Those walls of granite blocks that lock together so perfectly, you can't even slip a sheet of paper between them. No mortar, no cement, just raw stone, fitting with uncanny precision. And here's the kicker. Machu Picchu was supposedly built in the 15th century, much later than Puma Punku. But the style of its stonework echoes techniques seen in far older sites, like Sacsayhuaman. Was it independent invention, or did the Incas inherit techniques from an earlier, forgotten culture? That's the kind of uncomfortable question Puma Punku forces us to ask. Now, if you think hauling multi-ton blocks up a mountain ridge in Peru is wild, wait until you hear about Baalbek in Lebanon. Sitting on a windswept plateau in the Bekaa Valley is one of the most jaw-dropping feats of ancient construction anywhere on Earth, the massive Roman temple complex of Heliopolis. But the real stars of the show are buried in its foundations, the so-called trilithon stones. 3 enormous limestone blocks, each weighing over 800 tons, form part of the base platform. To put that into perspective, each one is heavier than a fully loaded Boeing 747. And nearby lies the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, a single block that tips the scales at over 1,000 tons. Modern cranes would struggle to lift it. Ancient engineers supposedly cut it, shaped it, and transported it. How? No one knows for sure. Some argue the Romans had clever engineering tricks. Others think the platform may predate Rome entirely. Sound familiar? Another site that doesn't quite fit the neat boxes of history. Then there's Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, which rewrites the entire timeline of human civilization. Discovered in the 1990s and dated to around 11,000 years ago, this site predates not just the pyramids, it predates writing, agriculture, and even the wheel. Yet, what do we see there? Perfectly carved T-shaped limestone pillars, some weighing up to 20 tons, are arranged in circular enclosures with detailed carvings of animals. According to textbooks, people of that era were supposed to be simple hunter-gatherers. No cities, no advanced planning, no monumental architecture, and yet Göbekli Tepe proves otherwise, that they not only had the organization to build these circles, but also the astronomical awareness to align them with celestial events. It's almost as if knowledge appeared far earlier than we've been taught, then somehow got lost, only to resurface thousands of years later. And of course, we can't forget Egypt's pyramids. The Great Pyramid of Giza, built more than 4,000 years ago, remains one of the most studied, and yet least understood, monuments in history. Its base is aligned almost perfectly to true north, with an accuracy of just a fraction of a degree. The structure is built with over 2 million limestone blocks, some weighing up to 15 tons each, transported and set in place with a precision that defies the tools we're told the builders had. And here's where things get strange. The pyramid encodes mathematical constants like pi and the golden ratio, and its layout mirrors the alignment of Orion's belt in the night sky. Just like Puma Punku, the message seems to be carved in stone. This wasn't random. It was designed with purpose, knowledge, and an obsession with the cosmos. When you line up all these sites, Machu Picchu, Baalbek, Göbekli Tepe, the pyramids, and Puma Punku, a pattern starts to emerge. Different continents, different cultures, different centuries, yet the same impossible stonework, the same obsession with perfect geometry, and the same link to the heavens. Did these civilizations all stumble onto the same knowledge independently? Or are we looking at fragments of something much larger, a global legacy of lost science, scattered like breadcrumbs through time? This is where Puma Punku gets even more chilling, because thanks to the AI reconstruction, we can now see that it wasn't just random blocks tumbled on the ground. It was a system, a planned, modular, mathematical system built with the same level of thought we see in the Great Pyramid, or Göbekli Tepe. Except here, the precision and prefabrication are on another level entirely. It's as if the builders were operating in a mindset far closer to modern engineering than ancient trial-and-error stonework. And here's the hook. If sites like Machu Picchu and Baalbek raise eyebrows, Puma Punku blows the doors off the debate. Because unlike those other sites, which at least have some kind of cultural continuity, the Incas, the Egyptians, the Romans, Puma Punku doesn't fit cleanly into the timeline. The Tiwanaku may have used it, but all evidence suggests they didn't build it. So if they weren't the architects, who was? That's the uncomfortable truth the AI dropped in researchers' laps. Puma Punku might not just be another mystery ruin. It might be the missing piece of a global puzzle, proof that there was once a civilization capable of things we can barely explain today, and that their fingerprints are scattered across the world in the form of impossible stones. The new reality and the bigger question. If the artificial intelligence reconstruction is even partly correct, Then Puma Punku is no longer just an interesting ruin tucked away in the Bolivian highlands. It becomes something else entirely, not simply the shattered remains of a culture, but the fossilized imprint of a forgotten science. Think about that for a second. Those scattered stones might not just be collapsed walls. They could be the last surviving record of knowledge that rivaled or even surpassed our own. And that's the part that rattles people the most. Because this isn't just about construction skills. The more we look at Puma Punku, the more it feels like we're staring into a mirror. One that reflects back not only what ancient people achieved, but also what they may have feared. Maybe these stones are not ruins at all. Maybe they are a message. Here's the chilling question. If they were that advanced, then where did they go? How do you go from building one of the most precise architectural complexes on Earth to vanishing without a trace? For decades, the standard explanation was simple. Puma Punku was built by the Tiwanaku culture around the 6th century AD. But the more evidence piles up, the less that story fits. The AI analysis suggests something very different. That the Tiwanaku may have inherited Puma Punku, not created it. Archaeologists have noticed a strange layering at the site. Pottery and ritual remains linked to the Tiwanaku often sit on top of the megalithic foundations, not within them. That suggests they came later, using the site as a ceremonial center, but not necessarily understanding or building its original core. So, if not the Tiwanaku, then who? And more importantly, what happened to them? The most straightforward explanation is also the most brutal. Nature itself may have ended them. The Bolivian Altiplano is no stranger to earthquakes, floods, and violent weather shifts. Geological surveys show that the ground around Puma Punku has been rocked by major seismic activity multiple times in the last 2,000 years. The strange scattering of massive blocks doesn't look like slow erosion or casual dismantling. It looks sudden, almost explosive. Some researchers point to evidence of massive flooding in the region. Ancient shorelines around nearby Lake Titicaca suggest water levels once rose far higher than today, possibly due to catastrophic meltwater floods from receding glaciers. Imagine a sudden surge of water sweeping through the plain, tearing apart walls, flipping stones that weighed more than 100 tons, and drowning the people who lived there. Others argue for something even more violent, a cosmic impact. Around the year 536 AD, historical records across the world describe a mysterious dark age triggered by a global dust cloud. The Byzantine historian Procopius wrote that the sun gave forth its light without brightness. Tree ring data show a sudden cooling, consistent with a massive volcanic eruption or cometary airburst. Could Puma Punku's destruction tie into that same window of catastrophe? The AI analysis even suggested the scattering of blocks resembled the blast wave of an airburst, like the famous Tunguska event of 1908 in Siberia, when a space rock exploded in the atmosphere and flattened thousands of square miles of forest. If Puma Punku really was designed as a cosmic observatory, a way to track dangerous celestial cycles, then here's the unsettling thought. Maybe the very disaster they were warning about finally arrived. But maybe it wasn't just brute force destruction. Maybe the people themselves played a role in their own disappearance. Imagine a society where knowledge is centralized in the hands of a priestly or elite class. The engineers, astronomers, and stoneworkers might have been a small, protected group, the keepers of knowledge. That makes sense if you're trying to control a population or preserve secrets. But it's also a dangerous game. If a single class holds all the keys, then when they vanish, through war, plague, or political collapse, the knowledge goes with them. History is full of these moments. Think of the Library of Alexandria, burned in antiquity. Thousands of years of mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy were reduced to ash in a matter of days.
Now, anybody that knows United States history or familiar with what they call United States history, we are riddled with destruction and fires and even on weather, right? Some mud floods and you know these disasters reshaped areas in different areas until we came united, right? To actually be minding each other businesses, right? That's all United States is. It's not minding my business, not minding your business. But this is what happened, right? To the whole knowledge, which they're trying to, oh, we don't know what happened. And they try to reconstruct the knowledge, and it ain't their fault, but ain't nobody fault alive, but it's somebody's fault. You know, they did these things intentionally, destroy, even if somebody was out of anger, right? Or you're getting paid to do it. But that's the most concurrent thing in history is destruction, right? Someone burning something down and killing a lot of people. In the mix of all that, a lot of information gets discarded and a lot of information get lost. Then myths become hearsay and fairy tales, right? And gossip. So just be mindful that these gossips and some of these fairy tales just might be true.
Or consider the Mayan scribes. When their cities fell, their glyphic writing system was almost completely lost, and only fragments remain today. If Puma Punku's builders had centralized their science in the same way, it might explain why no one else carried it forward. The Tiwanaku may have inherited the stones, but not the secrets, like someone stumbling upon a crashed spaceship but not knowing how to fly it. Another possibility is migration. Maybe they weren't wiped out. Maybe they scattered. Survivors could have carried pieces of their knowledge into new regions, planting seeds that later grew into myths, technologies, or building styles elsewhere. When we compare Puma Punku to other megalithic sites around the world, Egypt, Lebanon, Turkey, Peru, the similarities feel eerie. Perfectly cut stones, massive blocks are transported in ways we can't explain. Astronomical alignments coded into architecture. Could these be the echoes of a once unified knowledge system, fragmented across continents after some ancient disaster? Some Andean legends speak of Viracocha, a bearded godlike figure who appeared after a great flood and taught survivors arts like farming and building. Was he a mythologized memory of the last engineers of Puma Punku? If so, maybe those survivors became wanderers, passing their knowledge along until it was diluted into folklore. It's a tantalizing idea that the out-of-place precision we see at sites like Baalbek or Göbekli Tepe isn't a coincidence, but the faint fingerprints of a lost world civilization, one that fractured and faded, leaving only scattered whispers in stone. This leads us to a bigger, scarier possibility. Maybe history isn't a straight line of progress. Maybe it's a cycle. We like to think of human history as a neat ladder. Cavemen, then farmers, then cities, then spaceflight. But what if it's more like a sawtooth? Sharp rises, catastrophic falls, and forgotten peaks of brilliance. Archaeologists already admit that the timeline keeps getting pushed back. Göbekli Tepe forced us to recognize that organized religion, astronomy, and monumental construction existed 6,000 years earlier than we thought. The discovery of advanced metallurgy in prehistoric India pushed the story of complex chemistry back thousands of years. What if Puma Punku is yet another reminder that we've hit these peaks before and lost them? This also explains the silence. Why no tools, no records, no manuals? Because civilizations can collapse hard. Think about our own. If modern society suddenly fell tomorrow, no electricity, no internet, no industry. How long would it take before skyscrapers crumbled, satellites fell, and our achievements were nothing more than rusted ruins? 1,000 years from now, would survivors be able to rebuild a jet engine, or would they be carving wood and stone? Puma Punku may be the proof that this cycle has already played out before. And here lies the paradox. The AI reconstruction solves one mystery. Yes, Puma Punku was engineered, standardized, and scientifically aligned. But in solving that, it opens an even deeper mystery. How can such brilliance vanish so completely? A civilization capable of embedding astronomical cycles into stone should have left behind metal tools, workshops, or at least written records. But aside from the ruins themselves, there is only silence. That silence is deafening. It reminds us that civilizations are fragile, knowledge can be erased, and all that remains are enigmatic monuments for future generations.
So that's like an AI voiceover. He's gonna continue doing that.
You are obviously familiar with the American Indians and their famous totem pole, but you probably don't know about the totem pole of the ancient Europeans. It is called Irminsul, and it has been literally erased from history. However, our ancestors fought to the death to preserve this totem pole because it is a symbol of the ancient ancestral European ethnic religion.
I guess it's
It is the
in
memory of the ancient civilization,
another
the ancient
language.
ancestral way of life. And that is why the elites currently in power, but also for centuries, have tried to make us forget our good old totem pole from the time when we lived free and emancipated like true European Indians.
European Indian.
You have probably noticed how little known ancestral European spirituality is. We almost never talk about it. As soon as we lose interest in the three Abrahamic religions in terms of spirituality, we are systematically referred to Asian ethnic religions, Buddhism, and Hinduism, which is very interesting by the way. Or we are referred to the Toltec, to the spirituality of the American Indians. Again, it's interesting, but we act as if there was no primordial religion in Europe. But that's not true. There was an extraordinary religion in Europe, but it's hidden. Why? Well, quite simply because this ethnic religion, this spirituality has the power to liberate the consciousness of Europeans, of Westerners. And that's what the elites absolutely want to avoid. These elites initiated into high psychology who know these subtle things but are totally known by the public because they go beyond the average perception of the average person.
Very
But in fact,
interesting.
these are keys to domination, and it's to maintain this ring of power over our consciousness that we are distanced from our ancestral spirituality. You know,
Very
it's the
interesting.
ultimate symbol of this spirituality. Well, our ancestors fought to the death. Millions of lives were sacrificed to try to preserve as much as possible the symbol of this ancient religion. And that's why in this video, I'm going to tell you the tragic story of Lir Minu. The story of Arminu is the story of ancestral wisdom. It's the story of the just.
This is a random. I just thought it was interesting. It's translated in English, but it's talking in another language, and they're talking about European Indians. European Indians. Here you go.
Irminsul represents fairness, equality before the law between men. It is the symbol of the just. It is also the origin of the symbol of justice. It represents the gallows of the scales of justice. It is a symbol of fairness. It also represents the gavel of judges. This gavel of justice is in fact the hammer of the god Thor, the god of justice. Have you seen this Hermanu? It is magnificent. It is carved in solid wood. It was a gift given to me by a longtime subscriber, a big fan of the channel. So it was really an exceptional gift for me since it is my first Hermanu. It must be said that Irminsu are not common, they are not produced, they have not existed for centuries anyway. And so when he gave it to me, I was particularly touched because he is a very great sculptor. It is a magnificent work. And so I decided with him to also offer scale models of Irminsu. A Irminu that you can use to decorate your home but also has two uses related to the sacred and ritual.
Okay, I see a narrative as okay, they selling these things. Okay, but this interesting is attached to the scales. It's very interesting. The toe tech.
The first use is if you want to create a place of meditation at home, a hotel, a sacred place in which you can meditate, reflect or pray, well this Irminu is made for you. It will give you the atmosphere that every place needs to meditate. Finally, the last application, this is surely the most pleasant, is the one that will make you consume mead, honey wine in a ritualized setting. You know that this ermine is linked to the sacred tree that is linked to Odin and to mead. So, drinking mead around this ermine tree is something that is
Yeah,
done
mead
since
is
we
like
added a green
wine.
rest, and then there are also rings and things like that linked to the myths of Odin that I will explain at the end of the video. So here's the little ermine tree. It is available in the online store espritviking.com. The links are in the description.
Okay, he's selling that.
Included.
I want to get the information.
Thor. The ancient deities of our European ancestors. The symbols of justice come from the Irminu and Thor's hammer. Thor is the one who defends the supreme values of fairness and justice. He defends the widow and the orphan. He defends the little ones against the giants.
The widow and the orphan.
Irminsu is a civilizational indicator. His presence is synonymous with a just world presided over by ancestral wisdom. A living wisdom framed by the primordial European religion, Odinism. Odinism was the religion of the Franks of King Clovis, a dynasty called the Merovingians. And they kept this religion until their death. As evidenced by recently discovered archaeological evidence. And we are hiding this from you because today we are in the civilization of the super rich. A civilization where iniquity and injustice reign and where media propaganda is only a cover for the institutional lies that are at the base of this civilization. This shift from pure ancestral civilization to that of the reign of money. It is precisely the Irminu who will show us this. While the Merovingian Frankish kings were powerfully attached to the just law of Thor and Odin, certain elites with hearts debased and corrupted by money will nourish the ambition of overthrowing the Merovingians. This money that corrupts them comes from the new Eastern Muslim civilization based on money and the law of the strongest. It is driven by their desire for power and wealth that these new European elites will commit follies and transform the world into an incessant struggle, a permanent war for power and wealth.
He's saying power and wealth. Who's selling who here? So we have we have selling of pale skin. We have the selling of Albions here. This is he's confirming this in American, what they call it, not American, European Indian history.
Will commit follies and transform the world into an incessant struggle, a permanent war for power and wealth. These new corrupt elites are the Carolingians.
The
Those who overthrew
Carolingians.
the Merovingians with the help of finance and the Muslim army. After several major battles in Spain,
Hold up, how
help of
they?
finance and the Muslim army. Corrupt elites are the Carolingians.
The Carolingians. Really, really. This, the way they spell it, I'm gonna put it in the search entry. Um, where is it? Lining. Oh, okay, well, I got them up. Very interesting. Very
Those who overthrew the Merovingians with the help of finance and the Muslim army. After several major battles in Spain, Gaul and then Italy, the last faithful to the law of Odin and Thor took refuge in Saxony. There they found the last territories unsubdued by the nascent empire. But far from leaving them alone, the Carolingians declared war on them. It was a man named Carolus Magnus, whose name would later be changed to Charlemagne, who would come to destroy this region and this free people. Carolus Magnus wanted to impose Roman Christianity because this religion, the one of this new slave-owning civilization, was cruel. Indeed, if the Carolingians became rich and rose to power, it was because they made razzzias in the poor regions of northern Europe. They made slaves of men, but especially women and children, who they sold to the Islamic Empire to enrich themselves. In this northern region known as Saxony, Carolus Magnus used his army against civilians. He did not respect the laws of war and he broke ancestral moral rules. He did not hesitate to put to death those who refused to convert to Christianity. In the year 772, he went to a place of worship near the giant.
Hey, that is now the Florida Zoo and the Black Eagle. It's the flag of the Carolingians and the Frankish Empire, right? It's kind of, I wasn't expecting to go there. The Holy European Empire, right? Under revived the Carolingian blue and red. Look, Yo, you can't make this up, man. You cannot make this up. No, they were talking about the Muslims and stuff, right? Let's see. Let me see if I.
Name Arminsu. The Arminsu is above all a sacred tree, the symbol of ancestral religion, an emblem of fairness and justice.
Oh, I went back.
Carolus Magnus did not hesitate to have the 1,000-year-old tree cut down. The religious war was in full swing between the Christian Slavers and the Odinic people, of whom the Arminsu was the sacred symbol. The extremely violent war would last 30 years in 782. Carolus Magnus, later renamed Charlemagne.
Hold up. 30-year war? The 30-year war. That's something familiar about that. 30-year war.
Went with his army to kidnap an entire tribe of Saxon-Odinic people by surprise. He then gathered the 4,500 kidnapped family heads in a clearing and ordered them to convert immediately. On that dark night of 782, the fate of the Odinists was either the water of baptism of conversion or the edge of the sword. The monks then sang a hymn and asked the pagans to come forward to be baptized. There was a long silence as no man moved. When suddenly, one of them cried out, "We will remain faithful to the religion of our fathers." The soldiers of Charles Magnus then went to execute the first Odinic. With a clean blow of the sword, a first head fell and rolled at the feet of the bishop. Then a second head, cleanly severed, fell on the tall grass, which beaded with large red drops. It was then that a prisoner cried out, "Tonight, they will go to feast at Odin's banquet in Valhalla."
Oh, now
Carolus Magnus and his bishop.
we just heard. Well, this is the day is Sunday, September 28th. It's like 10:30 at night now, but we heard the FBI speak about Valhalla. And I just mentioned that he spoke about Valhalla, and here you go again. He actually said meet him in Valhalla. So listen to this again.
It was then that a prisoner cried out, "Tonight, they will go to feast at Odin's banquet in Valhalla."
A prisoner cried out, "They will go feast." So what is Kash Patel a prisoner? He said he told Charlie do CK, right? Meet him in Valhalla. Interesting.
Which beaded with large red drops. It was then that a prisoner cried out, "Tonight, they will go to feast at Odin's banquet in Valhalla." Carolus Magnus and his bishop, who had initially been descended, then became furious and hysterical, and he exclaimed, "Cut off the heads, you Christian fool, cut off these 4,500 pagan heads." This clearing of Verdun will not be watered by the water of Christian baptism.
Now, I have to say, when they said about pagan, I learned this earlier this week. Pagan also means the old ways. So if you're saying pagan, cut off the pagan heads, they cut off the old ways, right? They was cutting off the people or people that was holding knowledge. They was chopping their heads off. They was chopping their heads off right there. Cut off the old ways?
But by the blood of the righteous.
By the blood of the what?
Carolus Magnus and his bishop, who had initially been descended, then became furious and hysterical, and he exclaimed, "Cut off the heads, you Christian fool, cut off these 4,500 pagan heads. This clearing of Verdun will not be watered by the water of Christian baptism, but by the blood of the righteous. During the night, the Carolingian soldiers will continue their terrible work for a long time. 4,500 men will be beheaded in a single night. As for the women and children of this tribe, most of them will be sold as sex slaves in the Islamic Empire. Following the conquest of Saxony by Carolus Magnus, the last tribes loyal to the Ormu will take refuge even further north in Scandinavia. It is from there that the Vikings will set out to sow reprisals. Contrary to what we are led to believe, the Vikings were Odin warriors from all over Europe, not just Scandinavia. Asting, the Gulwa Viking, originally from Tranco near Sens, is the best example. The Vikings will achieve great things. They will even succeed in annihilating the white slave trade that was sold to the Islamic Empire. But Lorminsul itself would not rise from its ashes. Because even if the Odinic religion would continue to exist among the Vikings, it would not re-establish itself permanently in Europe. Too much harm had been done. Civilization was too financialized, too corrupt, and too sullied by the blood of thousands of innocents. The purity of spirit represented by Ormu was no more. The civilization of the righteous, driven by ancestral wisdom, was dead. So Irminsul had to remain so too. However, the Odinic spirit of justice represented by Irminsul would still live on in the mystery of cathedrals and Christian esotericism. Indeed, the Vikings would sow the seeds all over the world for a future rebirth of Irminsul. And these seeds are sprouting today. They bear fruit in cathedrals among other places. And yes, today we are witnessing a true rebirth of Irminsul, a rebirth of the spirit of justice, a return of the god Thor, the god Odin. It really is the rebirth of the religion of our ancestors. It's incredible. But all of this is...
It's incredible. He called himself a European Indian. Why would they be the European Indians and the Vikings and the Scandinavians? And but he did submit it to European enslavement, right? Or Scandinavian enslavement, right? To the so-called Muslims, right? So they were even selling their own people to the outsiders of their group, right? As the Muslims, or they killed pagans, right? The old ways people, right? The people, they killed all the pagans, and that's the same thing with St. George, right? Killing all the snakes where there was no snakes in Scotland. Stuff like that, right?
due to the seeds that the Vikings sowed through the cathedrals, but not only through the pyramids, through the French language itself. It's something beyond comprehension. Incidentally, that's where the name God comes from. These are things that are beyond us. But there you have it. There was, if you like, a book of Peter that was written in parallel with the paper book that is the Bible. And in this book of Peter that can be read in temples, cathedrals, well, we have the religion of justice, the religion of equity, that of Irminsul, of the gods, of the divinities of our ancestors. And that is extraordinary, and it is a source of great hope. If you want to know more about this rebirth of Irminsul, you absolutely have to watch The Pyramid Code, a series of 6 documentaries dedicated to reading this stone book that was bequeathed to us by our wisest ancestors.
That dude look like George Bush.
documentaries dedicated to reading this stone book?
This dude like George Bush. I would love. I don't know what anything of the look. What they repurpose
That
it.
was
Look
bequeathed
at
to us by
them.
our wisest ancestors.
This is a Scandinavian version.
And to understand the relationship between Erminsul and the Great Pyramid, you have to watch episode 4. But I will explain this link
We
between
got
the two to you
episode
quickly
4.
at the end of the video.
We're gonna have to look at for F because I know
Now,
it
we will look at the
mentees.
polarity relationship between Erminsul and the Christian cross. In fact, everything will be played out at the level of this point that you see there.
He's
This point that points to the sky, it is linked to the spirit, to spiritual religion. Where can we find the point on the Christian cross? Well, in fact, the Christian cross is planted in the ground. So in fact, it is facing downwards, it is oriented towards the earth. We
they
must see in this
crazy.
Christian cross a sword embedded in the ground. And so there you have it. We have this polarity between the Christian cross whose point actually points to the ground, earth, matter. It is a materialistic religion. And conversely, the Armenu is
he's in the rim of it, but the 4 cardinal points, he didn't say nothing about that, right? But that's will be the justice and God. But okay, let him go.
that of the spiritual religion. It therefore indicates the sky. And so truly, the two symbols are sacred because they allow us to indicate what type of civilization we are. What is the collective consciousness? What is the state of the collective consciousness? In the materialistic religion, perceptions are very limited. The mind is locked in a ring of propaganda belief installed by institutions lured by greed and power. Conversely, in the spiritual religion,
I just want to notice and bring that to a point. I guess we all come into the same indoctrination game, right? To say that they're lying. Somebody's lying. So we can't just saying that, oh, we can go with the main narrative of any civilization, right? Today, because most of them do not know, and if they don't know, they got recycled history, mirrored history, or history that actually interchange with each other, showing the one world connections. But people want to be the first, right? And when they trapped in the race, the rat race, you know, you always will be last.
in the materialistic religion, perceptions are very limited. The mind is locked in a ring of propaganda belief installed by institutions lured by greed and power. Conversely, in the spiritual religion, we are going to destroy this ring. We are going to free the human consciousness. And the shift from one civilization to another is therefore equivalent to a shift in religion as well. And so the shift from the Christian materialistic era to the spiritual Odinic era will be the lifting of this sword Excalibur. Since the Excalibur, when it is planted, is also a Christian cross. So it indicates the dominant matter. When Arthur arrives and raises the sword, brandishes it to the sky, it is the point of the Irmu. The era of materialism is over. We are truly moving. Arthur arrives and raises the sword, brandishes it to the sky, it is the point of the Irmu.
That's interesting, but I want to know what it really means, what he's really saying, the Luramu. Because linguistics, I know if, you know, I'm a Moor and we study all things Moor, everything, right? And he's saying it's a lot more. I gotta look this up. So let's look this up. L. I can't even see it, even with the glasses. D. Let's look this up. L I. That's L I. Well, let me go get my phone. I could do it better. Let it rock.
The era of materialism is over. We are truly moving on to mindfulness and spiritual religion. This story of Odin hanging. So imagine this, it is the tree of life. Odin is hanging upside down, so by the foot. And here, we once again find our idea of orientation either towards the sky or towards the earth. So here, when he is hanging from the tree of life, the point there, it is not in place because in fact, it is also in the Egyptian context that this myth is played out. And so it is Terminu, he will lose his point, he will transform into an ant cross, a cross, and precisely the ant that is above becomes the rope by which Odin is suspended. And in fact the point is Odin's head, so when he is upside down, it is the point facing downwards. There you have it. We also find this with the god aimed.
He done tied this to the unk. Is you serious? I'm sorry.
So here, when he is hanging from the tree of life, the point there, it is not in place.
He's hanging from the why? He's hanging from the tree of life. Hold up, I gotta go back.
And the shift from one civilization to another is therefore equivalent to a shift in religion as well. And so the shift from the Christian materialistic era to the spiritual Odinic era will be the lifting of this sword Excalibur. Since the Excalibur, when it is planted, is also a Christian cross. So it indicates the dominant matter. When Arthur arrives and raises the sword, brandishes it to the sky, it is the point of the Irmu. The era of materialism is over. We are truly moving on to mindfulness and spiritual religion.
He said Irmu.
This story of Odin hanging. So imagine this, it is the tree of life. Odin is hanging upside down, so by the foot. And here, we once again find our idea of orientation either towards the sky or towards the earth. So here, when he is hanging from the tree of life, the point there, it is not in place because in fact, it is also in the Egyptian context that this myth is played out.
What? Yo, you lie. He lying.
And so it is Terminu, he will lose his point, he will transform into an ant cross, a cross, and precisely the ant that is above becomes the rope by which Odin is suspended. And in fact the point is Odin's head, so when he is upside down, it is the point facing downwards. There you have it. We also find this with the god Heimdall.
That was not a good.
They say that Heimdall is the god with the sword head because in fact there is a link between your head and a possible point like that which would stick out and which is also in analogy with the crest of the Gallic rooster.
Gallic rooster.
The crest of the Gallic rooster symbolizes the point towards the sky.
He got a point in his head.
And that is why the god Heimdall, the god with the sword head, is linked to the... It is his animal. And he is a god like Odin who has an extremely fine perception of things. He sees what is true. He really has full consciousness, a spiritual spirit. Okay? Except that here, Odin in our myth, his head is down. So that means that it is the Christian heir. That means that it is the heir of the point down. And so that is why he is suspended for 9 nights. Now he is inactive at his tables. He is as if dead and done. It is not active. It is suspended for 9 nights. These 9 nights are in fact a symbol of the last 9 centuries. In fact, this is what we must see. This long period of darkness of the materialistic Christian religion where human consciousness was oriented towards earthly things, things of matter, of possession, and so on. This is what this myth of Odin hanging for 9 nights from the sacred tree means. At the end of 9 nights, so after 9 centuries, he falls back because he understood the secret of the runes and because he...
Okay. We'll go deeper into 9, the number 9, noon, none, right? The noneness, that's the N, the letter N. But I think he read some stories and imagination took over. That's my take so far, because we can explain this and he's wild, but I'm gonna let him live because maybe the translator ain't translating. I don't know.
He pierced his eye with his spear, Odin's spear. Now, all this is revealed with the Great Pyramid. In fact, we must see this tin suspended above the pyramid, which in fact contains, when we look at it, like on an architect's plan, runes, and there is a great secret with these runes. And when you understand this secret, it is because you have in fact understood the language of the spiritual religion that is written in the temples of stone. And so that's all, it's a play on words, his spear to Odin, it's the Great Pyramid. He pierces his eye, in fact, that means he pierces the veil that covered his eye.
Mm.
This ring of lies that surrounded his consciousness, if you like. He pierces it with his spear. So thanks to the pyramid that reveals to him the truth about his past, about his identity. Because here the god Odin, if you like, is a representation somewhere, of the state of human consciousness. So if he was facing down, that he was suspended, it's because things weren't going well for him. But he's a god. So he is reborn to himself completely in full consciousness after having discovered the secret of the runes and the Great Pyramid.
What?
Look at the code of the pyramids 4. Honestly, it's worth it. But I'll show you right away how this myth is transcribed and this great secret of the Great Pyramid of the runes and the Erminu. How is it transcribed onto the scale model of Herminu? Let's go to the great secret of the runes linked to the Erminsu and the Great Pyramid of Egypt. So here, we have the Ermu, the sacred tree from which Odin hangs for 9 nights.
No, he's calling it the Armu.
And during these 9 nights, he only looks down. He hangs by the foot, head down. So here we have Odin, who is symbolically represented by a ring and 2 arms, and so he looks down below him. And here the first secret is to know that it is above the Great Pyramid that he hangs above the Great Pyramid. Well, you will see, like on an architect's plan, a square and then the 2 diagonals of the square. That's what you see when you look at a pyramid seen from above. But the revelation comes when you understand the secret of the spear. Odin, who is also part of this myth because when Odin is suspended, he pierces himself with his spear. In reality, he pierces his eye with his spear, and that is what will allow him to understand the secret, to collect the runes and to come down from the tree and therefore finally to be spiritually reborn. He is reborn. Well, in fact, this secret is linked to the runes because in fact, Odin's spear, his rune, is the Geir rune and, in fact, we can obtain it from the view of the Great Pyramid, seen from above, by a simple operation of rotation on the diagonals, and we obtain the rune. When you do this mental exercise and you discover it, when you have understood the language of the gods, you will be able to read this book of Peter, which will reveal the truth to you. You will be able to destroy this ring of power that has been instilled in you since birth and that obscures your conscience. You will break this ring. And that's why what we did here is that when Odin pierces the eye, well, here we pierce the ring which symbolizes Odin's eye. Here we pierce it with the hook. What is this pierced eye? It is simply the veil that covered Odin's consciousness. The veil that obscured his perceptions, the veil of lies, he pierced it by piercing the secret of the Great Pyramid and his spear.
What is it called?
Piercing his eye is actually a really funny secret. It's the complete opposite of going blind. On the contrary, it's piercing your eye to finally be able to see. And so there you have it. Let's recap. You two are suspended above the pyramid. You see a geometric figure, and when you understand that the pyramid is Odin's spear and that you know the rune of Odin's spear, well, you realize that it's very close. All you have to do is rotate the diagonals and you arrive at the rune of Odin's spear. And that's why here below, we've drawn the top view of the pyramid, so a square with diagonals. And here, when you've understood the secret, when you've pierced your eye, bam, we have the rune of Odin's spear. You've discovered that the Great Pyramid is the spear of Ud. And so then Odin, as they say, he picks up his runes, he comes back down from the tree, and what's he going to do? Well, he's going to drink mead at the Mimir spring. Because mead, well, when you drink it, you're acquiring sacred knowledge. You see the world as it is. Drinking is seeing. Drinking is seeing. That's why
Now that's a lie. I just had that a saying. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Because a drunken person cannot attain the knowledge. Oh man. A drunken person cannot attain knowledge or wisdom. That is not true. You will open up channels, but you will be influenced by things other than just your own thoughts. That's why. But let me show you this. This is called a Morishing, right? And it's also called a jaw harp or a Jew harp. It's also called a Jew harp. Interesting. But yeah, this is a Morishing tool. And it's a tool they use for music, Morishing. But I have to find that other thing later. But drinking is you get so far in the spiritual realm. Drinking, you actually dilute yourself with a whole bunch of drunk people. Yeah, you'll hear wisdom, but wisdom also could come from the mouth of a inebriated person. Messages come in all forms, but not recommended to practice. They used to use spirits to prophesize, right? This guy wilded out.
when you drink mead, it's because you see reality as it is. You see the religion of your ancestors. You see the past as it is. You see all these lies that condition today's humans who are as crazy as the Romans, who do not face reality. Because yes, it is indeed having pierced his eye to the secret of the runes that Odin will see at the source of Mimir since, as it is said, it is in the poem Avamal. If you want the complete myth of this suspended Odin, it is in Avamal. It is also a book that you can find on the online store espritviking.com. It is in Avamal, by the way. It is really a gem, this myth of suspended Odin, which is really the basis of the Dinnic religion. It is only in Avamal. And in Avamal, we are clearly told that Odin goes to the renowned son of Boltorn. The renowned son of Boltorn. He can only have one, his Mimir. Especially since Odin clearly tells us that he is going to drink the precious mead. So we know very well that where Odin goes to drink mead, after having pierced his eye, is at Mimir's place at the Fountain of Mimir. So there you have it. You will find these little secrets on these Terminu with this rune engraved in the right place. The symbolism of the pierced eye that you find here, by piercing the ring, by destroying the ring of Sauron, the ring of power thanks to the point of the hook. There you have it. So here, in a profane position, you do not understand the divine language. Here, you have understood, so you have the right to drink mead. There you have it. I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to support me on the TP. It really
Interesting guy. I don't know where he came from, but interesting guy. Okay.
Get it by me.
Peace, and highly favored blessings. You're now rocking with your boy. You're now entered the labyrinth.